Welcome back, everybody. Really excited for you to join us today because we have Dwayne Allen as our guest. Dwayne, as many of you know, he's an executive who's been groomed for times like these. He's equipped with multiple industry experiences, has a healthy dose of self-awareness, and a passion for learning and for people. Dwayne is redefining the art of the possible as a strategic and innovative CTO. So Dwayne, I'm honored to call you a friend and excited to unpack this incredible journey of yours. And I'd like to start out by shining the light on these past 12 months, what I would call one of those dream years in someone's career. So welcome to the show, and please take us inside the world of Dwayne Allen and your incredible dream year.
Dan, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here and looking forward to this discussion. And I've seen some of your past podcasts, so I must disclose I feel a little pressure. You've had some really, really, really exceptional previous guests, some of whom I know personally. So I'm just honored to be here. If I think about this last 12 months, you described it well. It's been quite a dream scenario, if you will. But first, I think it starts with the company I work for. So for those that don't know, Unisys is a global IT services and solutions company, $2 billion in revenue, 900 clients, do business in about 45 countries. But we've been going through our own transformation. You hear companies talk about that, but ours has been really, really amazing. We just launched a new brand around reimagining the status quo. And really the part I love is it's focusing on experiencing breakthroughs. So one, just starting with the fact that I'm at an incredible company, CEO I admire and enjoy working for and learn a lot from, tremendous colleagues, and a tremendous direct staff that reports to me, my direct staff, my leadership team, if you will. So having that is a great start. And then it's just taken off from there. As you've mentioned, I've had a chance to now get involved in some other business processes that the CEO and COO have asked me to do. I was named in the top 50 IT exec. I had a chance to do some guest lectures at Carnegie Mellon and some other places. And so it's almost like self-actualization. It's like this full career is coming together. But I got to tell you, a lot of it starts with the place I'm at. So while I know this is going to be about me, I couldn't start off without talking about Unisys and the great things going on there and how excited I am to be there and proud to be a part of that leadership team.
Yeah, we're going to unpack more of that because it's a pretty special story you're all writing there. I know of Unisys. I was at the NCR Corporation back in the day when Unisys was formed, and it was Sperry and Burroughs, I think, were merged a long time ago.
So let me take you further back, then we'll get back to your, I won't take over your podcast, but coming out of college, I had to finalize between two job offers. The first one was Marriott, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, but the other one was with Data General. Well, guess what? Data General got acquired by Burroughs, and Burroughs and Sperry merged to become Unisys. So here I am. I now get to pursue both choices.
That's pretty cool. You got both jobs. Yeah.
There you go.
Well, part of your story the last 12 months, Dwayne, it's the CIO's dream these days. The CTO's dream is to get invited to the board. And cross-country healthcare came calling. You went through a pretty rigorous process, I know. But I want to kind of talk about that because it's part of this dream year. And, kind of two questions. What, with this board in the interview process, what do they need you to bring to the board? And the second question is, what could you provide? What insights could you provide to your peers who are wanting to be on boards? What did you learn from that process?
Damn, you could not have asked a better opening question, because I think it's important to understand what is the board looking for, and then how does your background fit what they're looking for. And I'm saying this as a learning myself. I don't want to in any way sound prescriptive, because I know I've obviously wanted to be on a board. I know lots of people who want to be on boards who have tremendous backgrounds. So it's about the match per se. CrossCountry is a nationally recognized healthcare staffing, consulting, advisory firm. But part of their growth is driven by IT. They've got a platform, and they wanted some IT expertise on the board. And I consider myself honored to be a part of that board. And we'll talk about the process in a second. But They are filling a need, and they've got just tremendous upside. So I just could not be more excited to be there. I consider myself very fortunate, and it's funny, I'm going down in a week or so for my first in-person board meeting, but I'm looking forward to being there. When you talk about the process, it's unlike anything you've ever been through. So it's not like a job interview. It's more around fit. So as I mentioned, they wanted someone with some IT expertise, but not just that. They needed to feel that you could fit within the board, be a colleague. So as part of my process, I met with the recruiter several times for some screening, then got presented as a candidate to the client, excuse me. And then it just started a pretty lengthy and exhaustive interview process, which makes sense because it's kind of like a marriage. Like once you're on, you don't join a board for 2 years and then get replaced typically. I hope to not be one of those examples. So I met with every single board member, and then the board chair, who was the founder, then the CEO, and then there were references, and then there was another round of meetings in person. And it's just a long process, probably about 4 or 5 months. And not really knowing how the outcome was going to play out, because what I didn't realize, again, another learning, if it's a publicly traded company, you're probably not going to know till the end, because if they offer it to you, accept, it's got to be publicly disclosed within a certain window.
Right.
So, but the key thing I'd say for people interested in boards is, first of all, understanding your value proposition, which is different. So it's, what does that collection of experiences you've accumulated over the years mean? And how to tell the story and how to categorize it. And then how does that fit what a board's looking for? So I was talking to someone recently, the same recruiter that placed me, and she said, if financial times continue to get a little more turbulent, they're probably going to look for people who are CFOs, or so it depends on the need of the company and how you fit. But it was an honor to be selected, and I'm just excited to be a part of that process. And also, you need support. My CEO, you've heard me talk about him quite a bit, was a great supporter. I involved him early on and shared it with him, and he was very supportive, because you got to spend time, and they're probably going to ask for him as a reference. So you want to make sure you've got some support. Unlike a job interview where you could be interviewing and your company not know, and getting references from old jobs and things like that, this is completely different. This is the most transparent, above board, exhaustive process that you'll ever go through. But I'm thrilled.
Yeah, congratulations. It's going to be a great ride there. You're seeing a lot of healthcare players like that, really starting to bring technology expertise on the boards for all the reasons you'd imagine. And our good friend Art Hawkins was with him last week, as were you. And one of his questions, he does a lot of board searches for Russell Reynolds, and he asked candidates, what makes you in the top 99 percentile of people that make you qualify for this role? And it kind of gets to your point, like, what's your unique value proposition? So big shout out to our buddy Art and ITSMF as well.
No, I agree. And it's interesting because quite a few companies are now starting to want some IT executive presence on their board. The question is, how does that IT experience fit? So if you're manufacturing their consumer packaged goods or pharmaceuticals, it might not be as good a fit. But I've heard about this, obviously, but again, I'm new to this, so I in no way want to sound prescriptive or talk like an expert, but I'm thrilled to be a part of the process. I did have previous experience being on the board of a company called KPIT Technologies, based out of Pune, India, for like 6 years. Started as a joint venture, then they went independent, and I stayed on for a few years, but this was completely different.
Fantastic. Well, Paul Martin on your Unisys board, good friend, and former good example, former CIO, award-winning CIO, now on the Unisys board, Owens Corning board, and several others, and just incredible human being. And we're going to get him on the show here this summer.
Oh, that's great. It's funny. I met him in person for the first time because my first 2 board presentations were virtual for the Unisys board. So I met him in person for the first time. And you're right, because he was just a full board member. You didn't know that he had an IT background or anything like that. So great.
It's fantastic. So another part of your story happened last week, Dwayne. We were together in Orlando, along with Art and others. And for those who are watching on YouTube, on our left and over your right shoulder, there's a big honking trophy, and it's called what? It's called the ORBIE
Or
Award.
I
Yeah,
feel like I'm
tell
at the
us,
Super Bowl. I'm supposed to kiss it or something like that.
kiss that baby, send it on a tour.
Yeah, yeah. It went on a little tour in Tampa, but that's for a conversation over happy hour, not a podcast. So for those that don't know, I'm still thrilled, honored, flattered, and floating still. Was awarded and the recipient of the ORBIE, which is like the Oscar, if you will, for the IT profession, for CIO of the Year in Florida in the global category. They had several categories. And to be honest, Dan, leading up to this, I already considered myself a winner, just getting to be a finalist. They recounted some of the stats, but I think in Florida, during this past year, I think there were 180 submissions. Then a committee decided which ones warranted being nominees. And then a committee took those nominees down to a small group of finalists. So, and this involves engagement and, information collected and all that. So just to be a finalist, but to win, I can't describe it. It really felt like the Oscars to hear your name called and get up and do a speech, and just all the accolades and love and support of colleagues, former people who used to work for me, my current colleagues. My CEO sent a note to our leadership team and board. Unisys has already posted it on their LinkedIn page. Cross Country Healthcare has posted it on their LinkedIn page, me being a board member. So it's just tremendous, the support and excitement coming out of that. So I'm almost back down to earth. Give me another 24 hours and a budget meeting or something like that, then I'll be back. But it really was, one of those once in a lifetime. So when you talk about dream, I mean, that was the realization of the dream. It was really, really something.
I love it. I love it. Well, I want to kind of dive in deeper in terms of how does somebody like Dwayne Allen get here, right? It's not by mistake. It's not by accident. And, I always tell people it took my company 30 years to be an overnight sensation. And, so in your case, it's like, I want to kind of unpack some of those experiences, the skills, the journey, what is it that shaped you, that prepared you for, as I said in my introduction, for times like these. And so kind of want to open up your playbook a little bit. And I want to start off with a lightning round game, a word game, Dwayne. So I want to do a kind of go down career journey memory lane. And I want to just kind of rip through your different companies, which are fascinating. And first thing that comes to mind, just what sentence, what word comes to mind as I go through the, so you game? Does that work for you?
Sure.
Let's do it. All right. So first, hospitality leader, you mentioned earlier, Marriott Corporation in Washington, D.C.
Boy, when I think about Marriott, a couple things come to mind. One is that's just the foundation. That's where I started. I worked there for 14 years. Bill Marriott has this mantra called the spirit to serve. And here in our profession, I couldn't think of a better way to start my career. One, IT integrating with technology and so forth. So I'd say the foundation, spirit to serve, that to me, and those are just wonderful years. It's an iconic company. I'm always proud to say I worked for them and started my career there.
Great company. Done a lot of work with them over the years. You went from there, a big move, hard move, because you were well invested at Marriott, been there a long time. Wachovia Bank.
Yeah, and it's interesting. One more thing is I also grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, so that's a perfect segue. So I call the move to Wachovia, I'd say growth, confidence, and pressure. And the reason I say growth is it was the triple header: new city, new company, new industry. So I uprooted, went there with a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old, didn't know a soul, And it was a tremendous experience because it gave me confidence that I could go to a new industry and still learn and add value. And then after the merger, I had responsibility for risk IT. At that time, they were the 4th largest bank in the nation. So right after 9/11, I think that took 18 months off my life. All the pressure, all the regulations, the OCC, the Fed, no one was talking. So it was quite a bit of pressure, but that was a tremendous. I call that the greatest personal growth experience in my career because I left everything, but survived it, grew, thrived, and then could move on from there.
Yeah, duly noted. Not the easiest tenure, but the most growth because it really forced you through a lot of learning, a lot of challenge. Yeah. From there, so DC Marriott, North Carolina with Wachovia, then you go to Ohio with Fifth Third Bank.
Yeah, the Fifth Third experience was great too. And I would say the word that comes to mind there is kind of advancement. I was recruited there for my risk role because their chief risk officer had come from Wachovia, and they were in they had some regulatory challenges, and they didn't have the appropriate process, systems, and so forth, or a leader to help them with the Fed. So I came over, but I was really operating close to the top, very frequent interactions with the CEO and the CIO and the regulators. And I was able to lift that regulatory restriction ahead of schedule, which enabled them to grow. And that they then said, listen, we want you to be our first dedicated leader for M&A. So over, I don't know, an 18-month to 2-year period, I led a lot of acquisitions. I did 3 in 1 year, which grew the company by 10%. And I think I did 6 of their 10 largest acquisitions in the bank's history. So just a lot of growth, a lot of advancement, and a good experience. And again, that brought me to Cincinnati. So another relocation. So that's kind of these all experiences. But I love the way you're asking this because there was no plan. I didn't say a few years in this industry and then another one. It just kind of evolved organically.
Yeah. The next one was a really big one. I mean, in my mind, it was career impacting, new city, new company, new industry. You moved into manufacturing. It's like, hey, you're from hospitality, you're from financial services. What made you qualified for manufacturing? But Cummins was an amazing company and an amazing technology organization in those days.
I agree, Dan, and I got to tell you, this would be another significant growth experience for me for a couple of reasons. One, it was a different industry, manufacturing, but I started to get comfortable because I just love learning. I think that's part of my DNA that helps changing industries. But it's the first time I truly worked at a global company, and I mean global. I think they do business in 145 countries or something like that. And I had the opportunity to be CIO of a $6 billion segment, 75 sites in 13 countries, so almost a mini Fortune 500 company. So it really gave me that feeling of what's it like to sit in the CIO chair, although I wasn't the global CIO, but I was part of the leadership team. I got a chance to make business process suggestions on how we run our leadership team, and also as part of an executive development program that helped give me some exposure on dealing with boards and regulations and going to Capitol Hill and a variety of things. But that was global. I'd say global and executive. That was kind of a good rounding out.
Our good friend Earl Newsom is there now doing an amazing job.
Yes. And a previous person we know, Bruce Carver, was the CIO that recruited me. So we got some lineage of relationships there, which is great.
Yeah, small world we live in.
It does.
You and I forget the year. It was in June, and it was maybe like 5-6 years ago. We met at an ITSMF event, and you were transitioning to become the CIO of Masonite in Tampa. So again, another new company, new industry, new geography. And I'm like, Dwayne, I'm building this CIO group down there. Come join us. And you were just integral to that group.
So first of all, you're right. That was early, believe it or not, that was early 2017. So I've been here 6 years now.
Wow.
And you're right. One, you were very helpful, but I was taking the role at Masonite, and I call that, the big chair. Like you're a divisional CIO, you've been advising people. Now you're the person, you're the CIO. And I appreciate you because I had no network. We talked about this experience going to Charlotte. Well, this time it was the same thing. I'd never been to Tampa before, but having a network of other CIOs was kind of helpful getting started. So I appreciate you helping me with that. Another tremendous experience, but there's an old saying, be careful what you ask for. So love the company, loved what was going on, but the timing was interesting because we had some cyber challenges that I walked into that were just occurring as I was coming on board. And then right after that, we had a hurricane. And so the whole aspect of backup or recovery and all that all hit within the first 90 days. So be careful, or should I say be ready? Not be careful, but be ready. And I felt like I was, and that was a good experience. And while it was manufacturing, different company, building products, manufacturing, primarily doors and some other building products. So again, some learning and great experience. And again, that's what brought me to Tampa. And that's why I'm still here. I still am in Tampa now, but Masonite was another important step in my career journey.
Yeah, it's a great town, and like you say, that big chair is not for the faint of heart. It's
Mm-mm.
the real
No,
deal. And then
no.
you took. I remember when you called me and told me about your next move, and I probably did one of those faces, right? Like, you're going where? Uh, so you went to Microsoft and you worked in one of Satya Nadella's groups that he created, this boutique consulting group. So looking back on that, was that a career miss, detour, strategic? How do you see that in Microsoft?
Ooh, great question. And that's actually one of the more popular questions asked of me. And it's a more interesting story of even how that unfolded, but I'll just get to answer your question, which was actually both. It was a strategic move because I was operating in a completely different capacity. As you mentioned, it's this boutique group, a very exhaustive interview process. I think there were only 60 of us in the world working with our largest global clients, reimagining their future through digital transformation and innovation, primarily through the cloud. So I got to work with a variety of companies from Starbucks to Caterpillar to Komatsu, and eventually into healthcare. Some of the most honorable work I'll ever do because I was working with pharma companies during COVID. So we were just trying to save lives. But I was operating as a strategic advisor, a thought leader, a thinker, and a consultant. And it was a departure from my traditional IT experience. And to be honest, you couldn't even really draw upon some of those CIO experiences because you had to be a quick learner of the business and what they were trying to do. And what's interesting is during my tenure at Microsoft, I never once met with a CIO, not once. I only met with business leaders, segment presidents, the head of aftermarket or dealer network, or animal health and some of these pharma companies and things of that nature, our pharmaceutical global supply chain and delivery. So it was just a great kind of rounding out experience, if you will. And again, iconic leader, Satya, with an iconic vision at a just an apropos time. So I have nothing but fond memories of my time at Microsoft. And it filled a niche. I've always been, people meet me and they'll say you're in sales, or they'll say you're a consultant, or for some reason, the third guess is that I'm an attorney. And when I tell them I'm in IT, it's always a surprise. And I always say after the second guess, you got to buy drinks. But I've been in this career my entire life. I think there's no greater profession. So I love it.
That's fantastic. So, no, I know a lot of CIOs, and not everybody has had great success in picking their new opportunities, because it's a mutual interview, right? And some get into those opportunities 6 months and they know it's not right. I know a big time CIO. He was a week in and he stepped out of the job because he just knew he and the CEO were not going to have a great time together. But you've done a really, really good job of vetting these opportunities, Dwayne. So what lens do you look through as you're evaluating a board opportunity, a C-suite opportunity? Anything you can share there?
Sure, it's something that's acquired over time. It's not natural, but I gen it down to three things. In the end, it's about culture, values, and chemistry. As you move up in your career, when you first come out of college and early in your career, it's about the job. Can I achieve things? Is there a certain experience you want? But as you start moving up, the culture of the organization, is it a place where you can fit and thrive and be your authentic self and bring all that you can be? Are the values aligned with where you are? And then there's that chemistry, because these are people you work with. Sometimes over time, you've heard people say this is like family because you're so close. So that's important at the end stage. Now, getting there involves several things. It involves competence. You really have to be good at what you do. You heard me say I love learning, so you have to have the aptitude to learn different things. You got to speak the language of the business, which is a big learning that I've learned sometimes the hard way. You're talking about the greatest technology, how great it's going to be, it's the latest release, but you're not speaking the language of the business that'll, motivate them to want to engage, let alone spend money. So it's the combination of those things. So one, you've got to work your way up your career and be good at what you do and learn and be observant and figure out how to read the landscape, which is tricky sometimes for IT professionals because sometimes we're black and white. And the higher up you go, there's more gray. But then when you finally start looking at opportunities, it is, to me, culture, values, chemistry. Those things are most important. They ring true. They're hard to figure out, though. Sometimes you got to ask different questions or do some research because just about every company will say, we've got great values, we got a great culture, we got great values, great chemistry. So it's not easy. I'd love to give you something prescriptive, but you're going to have to lean in hard there and ask some different questions and maybe reverse engineer some of the answers and also reference, again, someone old like me who's been doing this a long time. I got experiences to draw upon, either to compare to say, that sounds like this, could this be that, and ask some more questions. But I think that's important, and that's one of the reasons I love where I am. I feel like I'm hitting all cylinders in those aspects.
Yeah. Well, speaking of where you are, you got one of these really interesting, Peter, I would call it CIO plus. I mean, it's a multifaceted role. And I'm actually hosting a dinner next month in Charlotte with a handful of people. And the topic of conversation is going to be, what are we? What the heck are we? Because they're transformation leaders, they're strategy leaders, they're innovation leaders, they're business leaders, they're P&L leaders. Tell us about your multifaceted role at Unisys.
I'm happy to, but first of all, I would say we are business leaders and executives, and we happen to have responsibility for the IT discipline. But much like other professions, we've got to go across the board. And it's interesting, we might talk about this in another aspect or an article in the future, but if you pay attention, you look at the trajectory of CEOs, many times they've operated in different places. Sometimes they were a CFO, sometimes they were the head of sales, sometimes they might have been in marketing or HR. Well, it's time for IT to join that continuum, if you will. So I think we are every bit as capable and as engaged as leaders as anyone else. And I'm getting a chance to experience that firsthand as well. So my specific responsibilities as CTO, so I've got responsibility for innovation, solution architecture, intellectual property, and patents. But over the years, particularly over the last year, the CEO and COO have come to me with some additional responsibilities. So first, it started with, we had an analyst and advisors event last year, and I was asked to lead a panel discussion with 5 clients. So I know what it's like to be a television producer now, because it's a lot of hours of interviewing the clients and interviewing the sales reps that support them, sales executives, and organizing the questions and so forth. But that was, again, a departure from the traditional, we want you to speak, but we want you to speak about IT. It was more, we want you to facilitate a business discussion with our clients around their needs, how we fit them in the future. And that went really well. And from there, I've been asked to take on some other responsibilities regarding how we're managing some of our accounts in terms of profitability and margin, how we leverage ourselves as executives and how we become sponsors for certain accounts to help our sales teams win. There's an investment committee that they've asked me to run as well. So I'm really, really fortunate to have gotten involved in some of these other responsibilities, but I'm benefiting from 2 things. One, there's that culture, values, chemistry. But again, I've got a tremendous team. So my team is doing a great job that enables me to do some of these other responsibilities. But I feel honored that Peter, my CEO, and Mike, our COO, think enough of me and have enough confidence in me to get me into some of these areas. And I think they see the value that we sometimes bring in our role because we're cross enterprise. We're not too invested in any one specific area. But that's been really good. And also getting involved a little bit in strategy. So it's been tremendous. And I like it. I'm really enjoying it.
You just reminded me of a quote from the very quotable James Dallas, who I think you know very well, 2-time ORBIE winner. CIO became a COO, and then he retired, and now he's on 5 big-time boards. And James will say, Nothing gets the board's attention like a customer story. And think of the CIO, CTO who shows up like that versus the IT person, right? So James is he's so good.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things I probably didn't mention is I've also participated in client pitches. So if we were responding to an RFP, I had a chance to fly with the team up to New York and be the lead exec sponsor on a pitch we were doing for a large law firm. So it's a lot. It's interesting because I'm on this side of the table now. I'm used to being on the client side. You're doing the pitch to me, what's going on, talk about those rates. So it's interesting to see how it all gets pulled together on this side of the table, and then work with the team representing them and facilitating a pitch to try to get customers to come on board and have us be their services or solution provider.
Yeah, I see you being really good at that, Dwayne, truthfully, because you're a partner, you're trusted. And so Dwayne, one of the things we like to do on the show is we like to bring in some people who know you well. We call it the mystery questioner. We have two of them.
You're making me nervous, but okay.
You're going to love these special people. And I think it took them maybe 2.5 seconds to say yes when we asked them. And so listen in and listen to the first one. Tell us who this is, and let's have some fun with the question.
Hi, Dwayne. I've known you for years, and it's been a while since we worked together, but I'm thankful for the work we did do. And I think about the experiences we had often. Many of them helped shape who I am as a leader. You were so great at balancing this line of listening, coaching, and guiding, but with giving me enough room to build on my own leadership capabilities. I remember one scenario when I had to make a really tough decision, and I knew in my gut what to do, but I needed your advice before finalizing. You listened and you had a great story. You always have a great story. And when we talked about when you have to make a tough call and then stick with it, one of those burn the boats kind of scenarios, I remember getting exactly what I needed and the confidence to make the right tough call. Always think about how you handled that, how you managed to make me feel accountable as a leader, yet supported in the choice. How can others do more of this? What's your leadership secret sauce?
Wow. That's a goosebump moment right there, Dwayne.
Oh my God. First of all, how are you finding these people? You're like Barbara Walters. That was Melanie Sandlin, a tremendous one. I think so highly of her. She's doing great things now at Allegiant, and we work together at Cummins. And I remember the exact story she's telling about, and it was a tough situation. Boy, there's so much in there. One, I think she mentioned one thing. I think it's important to listen, because sometimes familiarity breeds content. And what I remember going to banking, I'm going to get back to this in a second, but sometimes when I talk to people who say, I've done 80 acquisitions and mergers, that confidence blinds them to the point where they're not paying attention, where the landscape is changing and technology is changing and cutting over. It's different. So that experience stuck with me. So when Melanie came to me, I was listening. I didn't want to say, well, I've experienced this before or whatever. I think the other thing, though, is I think it's important to relate to the person you're talking to. And she's right. I try to relate with stories. So this reminds me of, and again, I've been doing this since the stone tablet age. So I've been doing this a long time. So unfortunately, I don't, I have lots of stories, but I do think it's important to listen. And I think relating is important. So that helps that person get comfortable that you really did hear me. You do understand the urgency of the situation. And then try to give some advice. Make sure the advice you give is what you believe. And then make sure they do have your support, because these decisions are tough. There's going to be blowback at times. I remember exactly what she's talking about, but I think it's important to listen, to relate, to demonstrate that you understand. And that's usually by saying something back, either with a story or recapping, so it looks like this. And then also solicit their input. So they want to, in some cases, she's right. She kind of had the answer, but wasn't sure she could go forward with it. And that's what you do. Dan, you're killing me. I might need some water now. Wow.
Yeah, for
Wow.
those who are on audio only, I think the body language from Dwayne said it all in terms of how special that
Wow.
was. So Melanie, thank you so much. And
But I will tell you, it is the most important part of what we do as leaders is we help develop people, we help support them. And I always say the strong reinforcement for me is sometimes I haven't had supportive bosses. Sometimes things didn't go what I expected, or I didn't feel like they had my back. Not in a um, that doesn't sound the way I don't mean it. Not that it was political or they were backstabbing, but you want to know that whoever you work for has the confidence in you, is going to support you. So I know what it's like not to have that. So that reinforces that as a leader, I try to do that.
yeah, yeah. Well, building confidence in your people is huge, and allows you to go off and do other things, and they can step up their game. And so, yeah. But again, Melanie, thank you so much. And Dwayne, don't go away. We've got one more. We've got one more person from
Do I
your.
need tissues here? What is going on?
We should send that in our pre-podcast package. Tracy, let's make sure we do that. Tissues for our guests. So let's listen in and see if you recognize this voice here.
So Dwayne, how do you really manage to develop and maintain a great professional network, not just locally, but also nationally, as well as globally? You do it really well, and you make it sound so easy. If there is any secret recipe that you have that you can share with us, would be great for upcoming leaders to learn from you and put it to practice. How do you do it, Dwayne?
Wow, Dan. That was Vasu Iyer, who has worked for me for a very long time at Cummins, and actually works for me now. So you've now contributed to his performance appraisal because he didn't tell me he was doing it.
You can pay me later, Vasu.
Yeah. And this is a person who knows me so well. I told him you might have to sign an NDA coming over here because you know me too well. I think for me, both whether it's your staff or colleagues, we're really in the people business. It's a myth about this IT and it's about bits and bytes and solutions. I mean, that's how we deliver things, but almost everything's done with people. You either have developers or architects or partners, suppliers, and so forth. And I think I'm just fortunate that I am a people person. I love connecting with people, but I find that I learn a lot. So it's not just the joy of doing that. And sometimes I just keep it going. So sometimes I haven't heard from someone in a while, I'll reach out. And it's across the board. Sometimes it's partners, sometimes it's past coworkers, it's former bosses or peers in an industry in another city and things of that nature. But keeping in contact helps to me build the context. So I think it's important. And how I do it is, I mean, what's interesting is given our field, sometimes it's a quick note, it's a quick message. And ironically, I'm meeting later on today with someone who was a previous podcast person for you. And we've not connected in years, and we're going to connect for 30 minutes this afternoon because I want to bounce some things off of her because she's also a superstar. And so I just try to do it both internally and externally. But what's interesting is it does take a little effort and structure because while I am an extrovert, I jokingly call myself a recovering extrovert, I can still be so heads down that I can look up and say, what am I doing? In fact, because I'm in Tampa and work remotely, sometimes I'm here for weeks. So I'm trying to make myself get out and have lunch with folks. And you introduced me recently to someone who I am going to have lunch with. But I think it's important to reach out to people. I think people enjoy it. I enjoy it. And I think you end up learning. If you think about it, it always gets into three categories. It's how are you doing professionally? How are you doing personally? And what's going on at work? What's the relevant topic of the day? And you just learn a lot and you bounce things off of one another. So it's kind of natural now. I just try to reach out, send a note. Usually the impetus is a note or a text, and that builds the momentum to set up time or pick a time where we can call or set up a video meeting. But it's important, it's vital.
That's good. I think there's two Achilles across our industry. Dwayne, you've kind of conquered both. One is we're not known as being great communicators. You talked about storytelling and be able to communicate a vision. And something that we've got to be very intentional with. The other one is networking, and Vasu hit on the nail on the head. It's, you do it to help others, you do it to learn from others. And I always tell folks, especially younger folks, we're all just one connection away from changing our entire career trajectory. And if you don't put yourself out there, it will never happen. And so take the shot, put yourself out there, make the effort, be intentional, and don't do it as a way of how can I get something from you, but do it as a way of how can I help you, and good things will flow from that.
Yeah, and I will tell you the other thing about networking is don't set limits on yourself. In fact, what led me to go to Microsoft was networking with a person that runs a CIO conference. So it wasn't a CIO or a CTO or a CEO. And I just said, hey, is there anything I can do to help? Because I was already doing a session. And he said, it's interesting you asked. Someone backed out and we have a gap in this boardroom. Could you do it? And I met the person, and they invited me to be at their digital transformation summit, which happened to be in Cancun, Mexico. So good opportunity there. But I didn't know it at the time. I just offered to help, being genuine. And that led to the connection that got me to Microsoft. So I don't set limits. Don't. There's an old person at Marriott, Cummins, that used to say this: don't confuse position with influence. And so network across the board, not just upwards, because you never know who has information or a connection that can help you.
So good. Thank you, Vasu. And I know Vasu also takes his role very seriously. And he knows you well enough now that he sees when you start to really get burnt out. And he'll force you, right? He'll force you to get some fresh air, get some downtime.
Yeah, it's actually the beauty of someone who knows you so well. But I can cover it, but he'll call me after staff meeting. So you look a little stressed today. I thought I was hiding it, So
you can't fool Vasu. That's good.
But the other thing, you're highlighting one other thing, Dan, though, is I think it's important to pick a really good team and make sure that team's diversified. Like, I have a fantastic team. They're not all like me. We can't have a bunch of extroverts, or we have to. So we've got a great mixture of folks who are strategic, who know how to execute, who can conduct meetings on their own, don't need me there, and so forth. So sometimes management's helping and then just getting out of the way. And that's what I try to do. So, but it is good to have people. If you do it well, it builds to almost like a family.
Yeah. Dwayne, I'm a big student of the CIOisms, right? Those expressions that you all use when you're communicating, you're telling a story, you're making a point, whether you're coaching or disciplining or whatever it might be. So I just want to go through some of my favorite Dwayneisms. There may be others that we should go to, but if I'm in a meeting with you and you say, this is a family discussion, what is it you are communicating in that moment?
So when I say it's a family discussion, that is one of my favorite terms. That means it's a time to be candid and free, and it's just us, because I usually follow that by it's just us. We don't have the neighbors here. We don't even have cousins, aunts, and uncles. It's just us. Because when you work in large corporate environments, you got so many stakeholders. You got your department, you got other departments you're working with, and so forth. And I always want to make sure my team knows that as a leader, at times I want to know their honest, candid, unfiltered opinion of something, because it helps me. So sometimes you got to facilitate that by making the environment safe. So look, guys, just like I usually say, let's just act like we're sitting around the kitchen table. So what's going on? What do you see? Or what should I watch out for? Many times, including when I joined Unisys, I'll have members of my team who've been around a long time. I want to leverage that. I don't want to ignore that. I want to embrace it. So sometimes and there's new leadership, so they might feel like, there's a new direction. Should I say what I feel? But and when we're having a family discussion, let's put it on the table, no filters. By the way, sometimes that family discussion yields feedback to me about myself. We need to make sure you're available or whatever. So it's important to get that. But that's one of my go-tos. You're right. We're just having a family discussion here. Let's get to it on the table, just like you are with your own family. You discuss things with your nuclear family that not everyone knows about. So that's the way I treat my teams.
Good. That's good. You've got another one I'll have you talk about to help people lift up their heads, to make sure they're focused on the big rocks, not the busy work, right? And make sure we're working on the right things. What's that Dwayneism?
That Dwayneism is there's nothing worse than working hard on something nobody cares about. Yeah, and that is true. And that's born from personal experience, by the way, because I remembered working really hard on a program and delivering something, and because it was an assignment given to me. And when I shared it with the business stakeholder, it was kind of like a shrug, like, okay. And it's like, geez, I put so much time and effort into that. I don't like this feeling. It's not their fault, but I don't like the feeling of working hard and you not caring. So I try to make sure I understand what the priorities are with the business. I try to speak their language, continue to validate, including when I joined Unisys, the priority when I joined is different than the priority now. So I've had to make some changes, but I've got my team focused on what's important with the company, because there's just nothing worse that you're delivering this report, you're busting your tail. And so to me, it's another way of saying, let's just make sure we're aligned with the vision of the company. If the CEO has said the goal this year is increasing sales or improving profit margin, then let's make sure what we're doing is aligned to that. It might not be exactly that. We might be helping with architecture, resiliency, a repeatable, reusable component so we can deliver things better. But we want to make sure we're aligned to those types of things. So that's born from personal experience. And I live, one, not to experience that myself, but to make sure my team doesn't do it, because there's just too much work to be done. So let's just prioritize and make sure we're working on what's most important to the company.
So great for engagement too, right? And fighting burnout, because if people are doing that kind of stuff, they're going to burn out, right? They're not tied to the mission and the purpose and whatnot. One more, Dwayne. So take us in the moment. You're leading an organization through those big, hairy, audacious initiatives. It gets down to the wire. People start getting fidgety. People start wondering, is it going to work? People get a little scared. What's the Dwayneism for that moment?
If it's getting hard, that means we're getting close. So
yeah,
that is
like
true.
that
is my go-to, because one, drawing from personal experience, but usually there's some bumps in the road. And it's funny, I'm a quotes person, so I got lots of quotes, but one of my favorite ones comes from a speaker named Willie Jolly. He's a motivational speaker, but the quote goes like this: a setback is just a setup for a comeback. Okay. So many times there's bumps in the road, or if you're trying something new, sometimes there's resistance in the organization. You're doing something different. We got pushback. These people are, if they're pushing back, that means we're close. That means we're close to something that's important, and we got to communicate them. We got to pull them in. Sometimes things don't work that well technically. I remembered early in my career, we were writing a payroll software solution for the restaurants group at Marriott. This was before people bought third-party packages. And there was a bug that was like needle in a haystack. And it was like, I won't give you all the details, but it took a long time to find it. And we had training held up, we had roll-up held up, and we kept testing and testing to figure out the bug. And we finally found, in fact, I found it. It was just kind of a fluke, but I remembered the lead client running down the hall and kissing me. Like, she was just so happy because we told everyone the solution was coming. We had them ready, but it didn't pass testing. But there was lots of doubtful moments. Will this work? Are we going to have to go back to the drawing board? Are we going to have to let them continue on the legacy system? And so every time, rarely is it a straight path. If it's a straight path, they wouldn't need us, right? They just lay out goal, put a PowerPoint up on the screen and say, this is what we're doing. Everyone nods their head and move that direction. But we're dealing with people, we're dealing with perspectives, we're dealing with history, we're dealing with culture. And so making change, driving things in a new direction is hard. It's not for the faint of heart, as you said earlier, right? So usually as you're matriculating towards success, there's a bump in the road, and sometimes the bumps get bigger as you get closer. So I usually say, if it's getting hard, that means we're getting close. So let's stick with it. Maybe make an adjustment, not dogmatically push ahead, but I think we're close to pay dirt where we're going to help achieve whatever the goal is.
Fantastic. And a setback is a setup for a comeback.
Yeah.
I get it right? Okay. I captured that too.
In fact, that's one. Several of these quotes are in the Allen family vernacular. So my my older daughter especially has referenced that quote quite a bit when she's doing things. So, or sometimes I'll start, okay, sounds like a tough time, but a setback is what? And she'll finish it, set up for a comeback. So it's
I love it.
one of my go-tos.
I wish we had time to talk about your girls because you talk about them all the time, and love hearing about them and seeing their pictures. They're just successful, beautiful young ladies. So wish them well. And, kind of put a bow around this, Dwayne. One of the things that we're very committed to, like you are, is giving back. We call it Tech for Good. And we continue to commit $125,000 a year in scholarships to our TechLX leadership program. And so, as you know, as a guest, you have the opportunity to gift a seat in that 9-month program to one of the nonprofits that you are involved in. So anybody come to mind? I mean, you're involved in a lot of things, but who comes to mind?
Good question. This has been an exhaustive process for me. So first of all, the organization I want to give this to is the Information Technology Senior Management Forum. It's an organization I've been a part of for years, but they've grown to the point where it's not just a bunch of, and by the way, it's an organization for senior level African-American IT executives, CIOs, CTOs, and the like, and sometimes entrepreneurs of IT companies. But it's grown so much. It's got a lot of programs for developing. There's a management academy, there's an executive academy, and we are committed to developing the next 500 IT leaders to help diversify the leadership ranks in IT. So I would like to gift it to them. However, as you know, I'm new to Tampa, so I've been getting to know some of the nonprofits here, and a lot of them are leveraging outsourced partners and things of that nature. But I want to continue. You sparked something else, Dan, while I've answered your question, and I'm going to be gifting this. You sparked a new local passion for me to explore more about this. And I've got a good network here and folks who are on boards of some of these companies. So I really admire you for doing that. So not only were you gifting it, it's kind of teaching a man to fish, right? So while I'm very involved in the community and a variety of things, what you posed was something I hadn't really thought about. I've supported causes, I've donated, I've volunteered time. But I want to explore this further because it reminds me back when I was in Washington, they used to have something called Business Volunteers for the Arts. And we used to volunteer our time to help local arts organizations because they didn't have IT staff and budget. So you're bringing me full circle. So sorry to give such a long, verbose answer, but I wanted to both answer your question, but thank you for the intellectual nudge, should I say? And hope more to come on that. Maybe this is something you and I'll talk about one day.
I'm sure we will. And it just really pleases me because, I'm a big part of the family, ITSMF, IT Senior Management Forum, also affectionately known as It's My Family.
True.
Right?
ITSMF stands for It's My Family, for sure.
And if you don't like hugs, do not go to a symposium event because it's a lot of love going on. And I'll also say, Dwayne, I had the honor of leading a panel there in the past with Ted Colbert, Boeing, who's now a CEO, Larry Quinlan, who's now former Deloitte, now on several boards, many boards. We had Larry on the show recently, and Damon Carter, who's now a CHRO in a large corporation, and probably the most powerful room I've ever been in. So it's a great gift. And so, Dwayne, as we pivot, we're going to spend some more time, and we're going to craft an article that'll go live next week on CIO.com. And I want to talk to you about your views around what you call the transcendent impact of IT leadership. And also, I'm really intrigued by delivering value without boundaries or limits, something that you've crafted. And so we're going to dig into that. But Dwayne, I can't thank you enough for your time. Congratulations on the year. I think the next year is going to be even bigger for you. I don't know what that's going to be. It's hard to top what you just did, but maybe there'll be a national ORBIE on the other shoulder and other board roles. But thanks so much. And on behalf of the entire community, keep up the great work. We appreciate you.
Dan, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for what you do. This is a gift to all of us. All of us in the industry get a chance to hear these podcasts. I've listened to a few of yours. Some of them are people I know, some of them are people I don't know. But as leaders are looking to round out their career, to me, I think the word is portfolio, because you got to have a variety of things. having this as a resource is just tremendous for everyone, no matter what level you're at, whether you're a CTO like me, a CIO, a senior vice president, director, whatever you want to do. So I want to just congratulate and commend you for your leadership and the forward thinking to put something like this together, because I don't know of another one that exists just like this. So I really want to congratulate you and give you the accolades. And I'm giving you a hand for those who are going to watch this on video.
Thank you, Dwayne. Appreciate that. Big shout out to Ryan and Tracy and Marla, my team, that they do the heavy lift, and couldn't do without them. So bravo to you all. And Dwayne, thanks so much, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks a lot, Dan, and congratulations.
Developing a robust pipeline of future-ready IT leaders who know how to show up and engage differently is paramount to success today. If you would like to learn more about the TechLX Leadership Development Program that Dan talks about in the podcast, we invite you to visit techwhisperers.net. Equip your workforce with a new mindset and skill set needed to maximize impact, increase engagement, and build a world-class talent magnet brand. You've been listening to Tech Whisperers, inside the playbook of the best digital leaders, a Woolette and Associates podcast. Keep connected with us by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you like what you've heard, please rate the show, as this helps us connect the world's best digital leaders with those who aspire to learn, grow, and thrive in this amazing profession. Thanks for listening. Until next time.